Hello, hello. This is Lyndall Descant, and welcome to Music as a Metaphor for life at large and for doing that work to become who you truly want to be, to shed yourself of all of your limitations, of all your guilt, of everything that's holding you back from being a co-creator being, feeling good about who you are and the life you're living, as opposed to contributing to the chaos and cruelty. So today what we're going to do is talk a little bit more about perfectionism, which is one of the biggest blocks to people that I have seen as a music teacher over and over and over again. Absolutely the biggest block. And it's a big subject because music as a metaphor, when you really look at your life at large, very often many of us are being crippled by perfectionism, and it's talking us in an insidious way out of even starting some of the things that we truly like to do, in particular creative activities. So I had an experience last night at the Jazz Jam that I wanted to talk about today. And then the episode I released today on my YouTube, 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern, was about perfectionism. Okay, episode 21 was all about perfectionism, and I realized I wanted to circle back to some of those topics, and then it was like perfect timing because I experienced my own perfectionism block last night, and it was really reeling me. So I want to talk a little bit about that, and then I want to get into a song that I wrote a long time ago called Let It All Crumble, because I think it's a good song for right now. It's a prescription to help you find that calm in the storm, which is so needed right now. So we're going to talk about all those things today and more. My name is Lyndall Descant. This is Music as a Metaphor, and we are coming to not necessarily live, but I'm recording this day. I'm going to release it on freeworld.fm, which I will be honest is a struggling truther internet radio station. We had wanted to do a launch by now, a hard launch. We just sort of been doing a soft launch. And so I meant to say this last week. I keep saying, or I keep thinking to myself, like, this might be the last episode that I do and I release on Free World. And then we'll do the back catalog, one a week of the episodes, because I'm about 10 episodes behind on my actual YouTube. And then once that's over, I'll probably take a little break for a while, refocus on some projects I haven't been able to get to, keeping this weekly commitment. And then maybe, come back out for season 2 on a podcast, etc. I love the people involved with freeworld.fm. If you don't know them, Billy Ray Valentine on Infinite Fringe, The Wise Wolf. He's a paratruther, got a very interesting show talking all things, paratruther. What is it? Paramilitary, basically, I'm not exactly sure. It's kind of like he'll talk about anything and everything, but it's a very grounded focus because he was a military man, and he understands a lot about operations and politics, etc. So he does a really good job walking the line. So does Billy Ray with trying to bring us information without getting into the realm of speculation or infotainment, etc. Trying to cut through the lies and the BS and not get pulled into a lot of these different psyops, and it's just so hard to tell. So that's where I just wanted to mention that I absolutely adore the people that are involved with freeworld.fm, and if we can get it to a place where we can launch it, trust me, I will be promoting it all over the place. But for right now, it's kind of limping along, and we'll see what happens, as many things are, because life, it is October now, October 2024, and I'll tell you, it has been difficult. It has been really hard this month, emotionally, intellectually, physically, and definitely emotionally. Part of it has to do with the aftermath of Hurricane Helene and all the implications of watching fellow Americans suffer, and actually, allegations being made that they're actually being blocked from helping each other. I mean, that has just been heartbreaking. On so many levels. And it's also, the Diddy scandal hit, really hit mainstream, really came out, and it's been exposing a lot there as well. Even going into the depths of where I didn't think it would, which is, prepubescent children, which is, of course, if you've been part of the truther community, you've known for some time this needs to be exposed, that there is massive abuse of children, not just teens, not just minors under 17, like 13 to 17, which of course is definitely happening as well and is wrong. But even more shocking that most people don't realize is the number of children that are younger than that are being groomed and abused. And so that's been coming out, as there's an allegation that Diddy did something or had some inappropriate interaction with a 9-year-old. And I was surprised that actually hit mainstream. And when I say mainstream, I will say my world of mainstream, because I definitely feel like you can be sequestered into your own mainstream, and in that world perhaps people aren't hearing anything, because I've even heard that people aren't hearing about North Carolina and Hurricane Helene. Like, they're not hearing how bad it is. And I have witnessed that myself, when there are people that are listening to a certain news network and they only think what that news network has to say is the truth, and there are surprisingly shocking amounts of things that they have never heard of, including for years up in New York, nobody thought the border was open. They thought that was some sort of radical rumor that people from Texas were making up just to be hysterical, I guess. I'm not sure. So it's crazy the way that people are denying reality these days. And that was part of what I was talking about in the episode 21 that's up on my YouTube now, Lyndall Descant. And that was that it's really important, the ability to admit you're wrong, to admit when you really thought one perspective was true, and then it comes to find out, no, actually I was missing something. I'm got my own blind spots. We all do. We really do. And when you're involved in the great work, which is, wanting to truly improve who you are as a person, not from a place of, and well, it can start out that way, trying to earn your own self-esteem, rebuild your own self-esteem back, try to become a better human being, because you do not want to contribute to the just absolute horrible things that are happening in the world. And in some ways, it's a hard pill to swallow, but closing your eyes and ignoring things and having tunnel vision on your own life and your own self-interest, that as well does allow terrible things to happen to people. And that's one of the biggest things that I have seen growing up in America. And one of the things I railed against was that sort of like, me and mine are good, and that's all that matters, right? It doesn't really matter if my decisions and my lifestyle is affecting other people in other places, right? Americans have been really, really willfully ignorant to what our country has been doing out in the world for many, many decades. And some would say that, the things that are happening to us now, we brought upon ourselves by sticking our head in the sand and just only caring about our own life, and as well being caught up in the distraction of rah, 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 blue versus red, when, it's a much bigger, web that's being spun, a much bigger spider web that you're dealing with than just red versus blue. And that's where people have these blind spots, right? Because you can be so focused on it, and you have all the evidence in your world to support red versus blue. That confirmation bias isn't just online, it's in our own brains. I was just seeing this neurologist talk about this. And, we have to, the great work is recognizing and humbling yourself that you may or may not have meant to, but you might have been part of, a fallen world and a fallen system. And you want to, you're part of the matrix, right? And you want to come awake to it. And that process starts in the beginning one place, and then as you proceed through it, it constantly evolves and changes, because the matrix is ready for you, and it recognizes that people, the truth, you cannot suppress the truth. This is something I firmly believe. You have to expend so much energy to suppress the truth. So it will always bubble to the surface. And the question is whether or not you're willing to see it. It's not a question of information. It's whether or not internally you are ready to see it. And in order to be ready to see it, you have to be willing to admit that you've been wrong, that your perspective has been limited, that you need to repent. And this is what I think is so funny about this, because I was one of these people who couldn't stand, I rejected Christianity for so long. And I just couldn't stand it when I'd hear people like, repent, repent, the end is coming, the end is coming. And now here I am, like recognizing that repentance is one of the most powerful mindsets to be in. And it's what we all have to agree. If, I'll just take it down to the level of America. Like, we have to agree that some of our foreign policy has not been good to other places in the world. So it's not as simple as saying, like, here we are, let's argue about whether or not we should have these immigrants here or not, and let's neither side ever discuss the fact of why they're here. What is America's policy, foreign policy, done to other countries that's left them destitute and made them want to leave, their own lands? What have we been doing to the environment? What have we been doing to local economies? All of this stuff is out there at this point, and that's not really what this podcast is about. I'm not the best at explaining these things. Paratruther is a great place to go. Truthfully, there's so many places that you can go that I'm probably not even aware of, though I'm a long time, I guess you would call it truther, but that's not what we called it. It was just starting in the 90s, I just knew that the world wasn't what it appeared to be, and I was certain that I would be able to figure it out, and I was looking everywhere. And it was spirit-led, and it wasn't just about finding out what was going on in the world and the truth in the world. It was also about finding out the truth in me, because even very young, in my early 20s, I had some things happen, and I saw behavior in myself that I didn't want to own. And it was very uncomfortable and horrible to see this in myself. And it was brought about. And, some people have talked about this experience when you truly fall in love, how love itself can bring everything to the surface that isn't part of that. And rather than deal with those things, I saw it very clearly, but it plunged me into a place of such low self-esteem because my image of myself couldn't handle it. And this is where we circle into perfectionism. Perfectionism can be tied to this image we want of ourselves, this fake avatar that we need to survive, because we cannot process internally. We cannot own some of the ugliness we see in this world. We project it on other people. We project it out. In many cases, in a very sad way, it could be behaviors and sides to ourselves that came about because of trauma, because of abuse, because of terrible things that happened to us as children by other people who were not, completely in tune with who they are, had been traumatized, like these, generational curses, you could call it, or hereditary patterns, or even DNA trauma. There's so much evidence to say that this stuff can be passed down into families, but you can see it for yourself, right? Your grandparent, like for example, maybe your grandpa was in World War I and he was post-traumatic his whole life, and he would freak out and beat people in certain tempers, and then he'd turn around and not even recognize what he did. Like, it was almost like an alter personality. The rest of the family was grappling with how do you deal with that when somebody is supremely hurting you and abusing you and disempowering you from becoming who you could be, but at the same time you love this person and they love you. How confusing is that, right? And so then you, as the parent, you're going to do things different, right? You're going to, you're not going to be abusive in that way. But what are you going to do? You're going to stuff all your feelings away completely and be like an automaton and not be present and operate everything out of your intellect, which is a very cold way to be raised. I'm just giving examples of how people like yo-yo back and forth, like trying to solve the problem. But the only way to really, really change things is this internal work. And this is why I was pointing to music as being such a wonderful place, because sometimes we can over or underestimate where we are. But music is this real temperature gauge. Like, for example, if you're learning an instrument and you're being honest with yourself, you have to face the fact of if you can play a song or not, right? And then you might be able to play it at home, but then when you go to a jazz jam, you recognize, oh, I fell apart. Those are very honest feedback for yourself that you're not there yet with the song, right? Now, your low self-esteem, if it gets involved, will say, I'm a terrible person, I'll never be. And you make it you when you failed, right? You make the mistakes you, and you crumble from it. And you can't go on, and then you give up, which a lot of people do, right? But when you're doing this work in the proper way, then your self-esteem is not built on your performance or what you're doing outwardly. Your self-esteem is built on the fact that you showed up. You brought yourself there, right? And you're continually, every day, sitting down at your piano. That's where the self-esteem gets built, if you need it built, right? And ultimately, we decouple that that self-esteem from anything even in this world, because you start to recognize like how fallen this world is, and how much, if you want true feedback from this world, in many ways you might end up compromising yourself. It doesn't mean you don't get it. This world is more complicated than that, but there are times when if you're seeking that outward validation, then you're not actually doing this true work. But when you are, your self-esteem gets coupled to your divine inheritance as a child of God and a co-creator. And that you understand the message of Jesus is for everyone, and why believing in it is important, because what it does is it frees you up from trying to earn yourself or dig yourself out of the grave that most surely you're in, right? The debt of how many things that you have taken the wrong path, how many times you've chosen one direction over another, right? And you end up in this deficit that's impossible to get out. And then so many people try to earn their way out, especially secular humanism. You want to be a good person and you'll earn your way out, but you'll just never do it that way. And a lot of it has to do with our own hypocrisy, right? Where we see so much these days, like people proclaiming one thing, but they don't see their own blind spot of how they're actually, causing the same thing, but from a different direction. They just don't see it. They see it very clearly in other people. And they're going to, that's the funniest thing, is when people try to earn their self-esteem by just like criticizing everybody else. That doesn't work. You actually have to do the work. That's what a music practice can be, a wonderful metaphor for, a tangible way that you are working and building on this character. Developing yourself into somebody who really doesn't need the validation from the world, that your self-esteem is built on an identity that's beyond this world, and it's connected with your soul. And music does a lot to sort of integrate the different parts of your brain, right and left, to bring in your personality with your soul. Music is just magical in so many ways. And I talk about that over and over again. But the perfectionism and the need to be perfect and the pride associated with that, which also is what makes you not want to admit when you're wrong and makes you cling to this image of yourself, all of that's pride, right? And all of that really is selfish, narcissistic tendencies as well, because you are not able to let go of yourself enough to see a bigger picture of a community or a world, right? You're no longer concerned with being part of the whole. You want to be special. You want to stand out, right? One way or another. And all of that, I would say, comes from unhealthy self-esteem, because when you're really have this healed self-esteem, you love just being part of it. You love just being there, as a participant. That's it. That's enough, right? Which is the antidote for perfectionism, is to say that's enough. I don't have to be perfect, right? What is perfect being? It's like being number one or the best or standing out. Or in a way, it's also about fear of mistakes. Like you fear mistakes so much, you think that you're going to be punished for your mistakes so much, the shame that comes from your mistakes, the guilt from your mistakes, you weigh so heavily the mistakes that you're afraid of them. And then you have to be perfect, right? You have to be perfect just to justify your own existence, right? So all of that is where perfectionism is holding you back, both in music and in life. And I experienced it last night a little bit because I honestly had a really, really bad day. Part of it was just being too busy. It's a busy season for me, and I probably wasn't doing enough rest. I wasn't doing enough of my spiritual reading. I wasn't doing enough. I could tell I was getting out of balance, and I was like physically exhausted. And I woke up on Monday, and the jazz jam was that night, and I really hadn't practiced songs that much. And and there was a couple of songs I decided to do, but I really didn't know them that well, and ended up that day just having massive amounts of some kind of shift going on. To be honest with you, it sort of felt like last week I shifted timelines or something, and ever since then I've been kind of like rifing through my life and recognizing like what's still fitting and what doesn't, and I've just been feeling off. And all day yesterday I felt very off, and it was like a low self-esteem coming back, just a feeling of I don't know what it is, just not a good feeling. Let's just put it that way. I don't need to go into it. And I know that many people were feeling something like that yesterday, just because in my little world, I had several friends come to me as well and say they were having a very bad day. They were crying a lot. It was different triggers for each of us, but we were triggered by something. And I guess I could have not gone to the jazz jam. I certainly wasn't feeling it. And I definitely was feeling like physically exhausted. But a friend was going to be there that I love to see, and so I decided to go anyways. And I got up there, and it just went about as bad as it can go. It wasn't like a total train wreck, but part of what happened was I knew better. There had been a series of like 5 different singers that all were singing these songs that I know jazz musicians don't really like to play. And typically I'm pretty aware of that, and I'll go up and call a tune that they want to play, and I just can sing on it. And that's exactly what I should have done. But rather than listen to that, I had a little bit of fear, and I wanted to do the songs that I had sort of looked over that day that were in my short term. But the very first one I called, C'est si bon, they didn't know. And I should have pulled the plug right then and there and just said, what do you guys know? Let's do this. But instead, they started looking it up. It started taking a long time. We kind of lost the audience. And this is honestly not my strong suit, is, commanding the audience. And this jazz jam I'm at, like the singers before me are very, very good at that, right? They're like almost like comedians, like telling jokes and doing stuff and just engaging the audience and like singing to them. And that has never really been me. And honestly, when I go to this jazz jam, a lot of times I'm just thinking more like a jazz musician. Like I'm just wanting to get up there and do great music. And if the audience likes it, great. If they don't, that's okay. But that actually fell short in this scenario because, the owner of the jazz jam, somebody I really love, I was letting him down. Because a lot of people, whether it was me or not, a lot of people did leave during my songs. And that didn't feel great, okay? And you can't really use these things. Obviously, like I'm there every week, and this doesn't happen to me every week. That would be a sign I should take. And it wasn't that the singing was bad, but it's that I wasn't really, I don't know, it was almost more like my energy just wasn't there. I just wasn't feeling it. And then, oh my God, the ending of the first song did not go well. It was one of the only times when I've ever really like almost been demanding of these guys, and they fell so short, and I could tell they were exhausted. Probably everybody wasn't having a great day. It could have been that too, that just wasn't a great time. And then they switched out pianists. The next song I called, the guy didn't know it as well. And once again, in retrospect, I wish I had just called a different tune that I know. And even if I messed it up, who cares? But the guys would have played better. But instead I went with it, and that just ended okay. It wasn't great. But when I came down, I had somebody say something to me like, yeah, that was bad. And man, every trigger came back, right? In my mind, it was like, it doesn't matter if it's bad. And you know what I mean? Like it was a test, basically. And maybe that's what's happening to a lot of us right now. We're having triggers and we're having tests, and it's like we're getting punched, and it's like these things that we thought we've worked through, right? Because I really felt like I had gotten to a place where, good or bad, you get up there and you take the risk, and you're just happy you got up there. But I didn't feel that way. And especially having my friend do that, it was sort of like the image, it was hard to hear. Honestly, it was just like hard in real time to sit there and hear that, like the minute I got down from it. And I knew it was, right? But the very second I got down, I was more just like happy to be off the stage and like wanted to just sit there and chill out for a minute. And then I'm getting this bad feedback. And then I'm seeing the owner of it, and I could tell he was kind of like, yeah, the audience, like, kind of lost the audience on that one. And I did. There's no way around it. Okay. It wasn't a great performance. I mean, it wasn't terrible. It wasn't the worst thing in the world, but I definitely can do better. And it wasn't the music that I was singing, it was the choices I was making as a band leader. And later, this lady that I love, Queen Mary, she is like in her 80s and she sings every week. And she just, oh, freaking love her. She said to me, she was like, everybody was talking, you got to stop singing, you got to make them listen to you. And that was the message I was getting. And that's this like, oh God, I'm right back into this place where I have a very hard time. I've spoken about this. It's my voice. I have a hard time expressing and commanding people to listen to me. I don't even want to do that, to be honest with you. And in many cases, much of my career has been like, I'll get up here and I'll do music. And if you want to listen, great. I'm not going to force you. That's been my attitude. But now I'm having to look at that and recognize that I was letting down a community by being that way, because they actually needed me to keep that audience engaged. They needed me. And I think I can do it. I do. I think it's time. I think sometimes this is the point, okay? Like, I feel even now, like, sick talking about this. It's only the next day. And I talked to my friend a few months ago, and she is an amazing person who is a mother and from a very traditional religious background. Not anybody you would expect to be at a jazz jam every single week. And she's there learning drums. And apparently her story is that she, 4 months into it, ended up at a jazz jam and has been going ever since. And she was like, sometimes it's so cringe. I feel so cringe about how I played that I can't even come back. I'm cringe for 2 weeks and then I'm finally over and I can come back. And I was laughing, just being like, at the time, like, oh yeah, like, I guess I'm kind of over that a little bit, because I can get up there. My performances haven't been perfect at this jazz jam every week. Sometimes it's really good, sometimes not, but I've never been cringe about it until yesterday. And granted, my friend saying that didn't help, but mainly because then he felt bad and he kept bringing it up. And then he was like getting people to say, oh no, she's a good, it was like the whole thing. It was like, no, like, this is just, I feel too vulnerable after this experience to sit here and have everybody like commenting on it and stuff. I just felt so vulnerable. And the more I sat there, the more I started remembering moments coming back from it and just cringed how off I was. And the worst part to me was like being at odds with the guys I was playing with, because I thought I was better than that. I thought I was, a more considerate singer to call tunes and to, make it fun for the musicians that I'm playing with, because this is their jazz jam too. And they had just gone through like 5 or 6 singer songs that they didn't even really enjoy playing. It didn't really get to do solos on. So I was out of character too. Like, I wasn't being who my image of myself is, I guess. Is my image of myself is this considerate musician who knows how to like, bring in the jazz musicians and knows what they like and knows how to, get the best out of them in a performance with them and make it about all of us, not just being a lot of singers can be really like egocentric and do what I did, like call tunes they don't want to play and make them play them in keys that they don't want to play them in. And just the whole thing was like, and then I didn't get mad, but I did. It was a little bit more forceful when they weren't doing the ending the way I wanted. It was like, what happened, But really, it came down to me and not properly leading. All across the board, it's not stepping into my authority as a band leader, commanding the audience's attention and commanding the guys I'm playing with. And the truth is that sometimes I don't do those things because I don't want to be a bitch, right? I want to be like the nice singer. But that's what was so weird and twisted about last night, and how twisted up we can get in our own egos and our own images when we're not being authentic and we're trying to just like live up to some ideal we think of ourselves, is that I was being a bitch anyways, you know? So might as well have been a bitch in the right ways, right? Like being a bit more forceful with the audience and be like, hey, you know, and make them listen. I don't exactly know how I'm going to do that, but I guess I'm going to learn, you know, probably try to figure out how to use humor. And then I should have been more commanding with the guys about this is how we're going to do it. I mean, all of it. I could just see how some of my timidity, I'm sorry, there's apparently a lot of sirens and trucks, etc. going by today. My mic's picking up. You know, that's the thing, is that our image can be like we're trying to be this good person, and then we don't even recognize on the flip side we haven't been noticing how bitchy we're being. And last night and yesterday, a lot of my bitchy side was coming out, and it's ugly, right? I didn't want to see it. I want to think of myself as being a nice person and considerate to people. But listen, we all have blind spots, and I'm part of this world too, and I'm not better than anybody else. And so this is part of the process. This is why perfectionism will keep you from doing this exact type of work. Perfectionism will make you melt down when you have a night like last night and be cringe for 2 weeks. And then hopefully you get over it and you step back, but some people don't. And this is what I've seen over and over again. Many, many people quit music, or they don't even really start it because of this type of thing, where they don't want to have to see themselves as not being perfect or being wrong, right? And when you can't, it hurts. It's painful. And I woke up in the middle of the night with this and couldn't even go back to sleep. And then I woke up this morning and felt the same way. And I just felt yuck. And it was like, wow, I thought I was over this. And here I am, just right back to like yuckville, cringeville, like just embarrassed of what I did last night and getting up there and just yuck. And I feel it right now. It's in the pit of my stomach. It's guilt and shame and unworthiness. But this is the thing. The work is to let it come up, right? Let it be there. You're bigger than it. It's not you. It's just part of what needs to come up and be released and healed. And the crazy thing is, this is where I freaking love life in this way, is that I sit down to listen to episode 21 so I can get that up before I do this episode. And it's all about perfectionism. And man, it spoke to me. It just unwound me out of that mindset. It was exactly what I needed to hear. And so that's why the synchronicity of it, it's like, wow, okay. The thing it was reminding me of is that there is a different type of perfectionism that we should be seeking. And what that perfectionism is, being aligned with spirit. And when we are aligned with spirit, it means that our personality is free to be what it needs to be, right? It's going to be good, it's going to be bad, it's going to be this, it's going to be that, but we're being authentic, and we're not trying to be something that we think we should be. We're not trying to control our image for other people or for ourselves. And by doing this, there's a level of fulfillment that comes in, because we recognize that things actually work out way better than we imagined. And in many cases, and this is what I'm going to cry about, in many cases it becomes about lifting up others, allowing ourselves to come out of this role of having to be the hero all the time, and allow ourselves instead to be in community. And there's even times when we play the villain, right? And we might not want to recognize that, but there are times when we do something, and we might even do it with the best of intentions, but it turns out that wasn't the best thing to do. And last night, it wasn't about me. There was a wonderful jazz jam. I got up there. I feel bad that people left at that point, but there again, I'm not sure if it was really because of me or if it was because I was going up later in the evening. I wasn't in the early part of the night, and it's kind of going up after the main act. And a lot of times the audience does dip at that point. They might have been saturated at that point. There's so many things. And maybe the truth was, it was perfectly aligned for me to have to face this again in myself. And this time come out of it much more quickly. And this time come out of it because I myself, talked an episode about this. And I talked to myself, my past self from July, just help my future self in October to bounce back quickly and recognize that I don't need to be perfect to be loved, and that I'm not going to give up, that there's good and bad days, but that this is part of the process of music, that I will learn from it. But the biggest thing that I was reminded from that episode is that being able to recognize that you're wrong, or being able to see and accept your flaws, or just being off, right? Like getting up there and having a bad performance, and there's just no two ways about it. When that happens, we can use it to empower ourselves. Like this is what being in denial of it, when we don't want to see it because it's going to crush us. And we just, I could have gotten so mad at my friend for pointing this out, but he was right. He knows it wasn't a great performance. And I certainly can do better. And that's the whole thing. We will never get to the better. We will never get to the whole if we're not willing to look at ourselves, even however painful it might be, of where we actually are right now, and how we've actually been wrong, or how we need to course correct. When we do, it's a superpower to admit that we're wrong and then course correct, right? It's the doubling down and not wanting to see our own mistakes and our errors, being afraid of them, that keeps us on these self-sabotaging trajectories that in many cases have become quite dangerous. The world we're living in right now, man, people are doubling down on stuff, and it is definitely having some dire consequences. It's starting to become very clear that, our ability to be flexible, our ability to be humble, our ability to not make everything about ourselves, but try to rather, connect with God, connect with the whole, connect with community, think about other people. That is actually a way to stay safe and in the truth at this point, right? And the more that we want to make it about our own egos and our own lives and how perfect we are, and if we're still going to play that game, then in reality we're ungrounded and we're not in connection, and we're not getting the help that we could have if we are just able to surrender and say, you know what? I was wrong. That was me. I came in hot. No, like in a case of like arguing with somebody, or because I'm just telling you, you can argue all day these days with people, but the way to raise your frequency is to recognize that you are not that mistake, that it was just a mistake. No matter how much guilt and pain you feel from it, if you'll just allow yourself to face it and feel to heal, it will evaporate, and you will integrate those parts of you that were being suspended in some kind of trauma or fear. And so as you grow holistically, you have more empowerment to course correct, right? Like I have the ability right now. There's a part of me, a voice in me that's saying, this is not me. Like I'm just too shy of a person. I've overcome a lot of that, but I now that I'm trying to just stand up in front and command the room and all of this, I can do it. But then there's another part of me that's saying, just because you haven't done it doesn't mean you can't do it. And this is about where you're at. This is the step. Every single time I've had to up level, it's felt like it was going to be impossible. But there had to be a part of me that was willing to have faith that it was in front of me for a reason, because I could change, that I am empowered to change. And in some previous episodes I haven't listened back yet, I've talked a lot about owning our authority. So I probably need to listen to that, because I think it's partially about owning our authority, because that low self-esteem could be what's leading me to say like, hey, like I'll stand up here and do a song, but I'm not going to like make you listen to me, right? I don't necessarily have anything that important to say. And this is where, the humility can get mixed in with false humility, which is more about low self-esteem. And once again, if you think you're less than or you think you're better than, then you're disconnected. But when you know that you are enough as you are, that's how you show up. That's how you participate. That's how you own your authority. So I had those two songs. That was my time. The authority would be that I have something to say, and that these people would really be uplifted by listening. I do actually believe that. So I guess I'm going to be working on this, and I guess it's still part of this same theme of season 1 of Music as a Metaphor, is just really owning your voice and using your voice. And this for me has been a very long term journey. Very, very long. I've been working on this now for my whole life, and it's still there. And so don't be discouraged. Okay, we're in a season where our biggest life lessons are being brought to the surface, and it's for our benefit. And you would do well to just go ahead and face them, right? No matter how painful they are, no matter how much you don't want to see yourself as being that type of person, right? Just accept yourself. This radical self-acceptance is what leads to your authority and your empowerment and rejoining the collective as somebody who is actually helping. And that's what I want to say. As we're kind of maybe changing topics here a little bit. This black pill, red pill, a lot of people are waking up to some pretty horrific things right now, and there's a lot of emotional fallout that people have to deal with that. So this is more for people who have been on this journey for a long time, and there's this sort of fight. There's fighting within everything these days, but within the truther community, there's red pillars, and then there's black pillars. And the black pillars are supposedly people who have they're all doom and gloom, right? And truthfully, I think it's some of the more seasoned truthers, in my opinion, because the more you've studied, it's very easy to be optimistic in the beginning when you first start hearing this stuff, because it's like, oh, it's coming to light, it's all going to be better. But when you've been doing this for 20, 30, 40 years, it's a little bit harder because you've seen the twists and turns. You've seen how insidious the matrix can be with all these psyops and traps for even the truthers, right? And then there's all this evidence for, like, even some of the people that seem to be leading right now in the alternative media space. There's all this evidence of their connections to all the same characters, the establishment characters that basically are behind so many things. So this research can lead you to the black pill very easily. And I think the only way out of the black pill is faith. And the interesting thing is that when you do have faith, then I think you see what's going on right now as a positive. And this is what's crazy. Because there has been really, really terrible things going on behind the surface, and it's been right in front of our eyes, and we have no idea. And all of this stuff is coming to light. Many people say apocalypse is about the great revealing, and that ever since the Mayan calendar ended in 2012, that's what's been going on. There's been this slow unraveling, right? And many people would say there's this epic battle happening between light and dark, and you can argue about who's winning. And there's definitely this stance that I believe in, that Jesus already won. Like, the victory already happened, but somehow it's almost like the battle now is for our own mind, and whether or not we believe that, versus getting duped with the devil and sort of getting flushed whenever some would say it's a simulation, some would say the earth, some would say, this first heaven, as they would say, the 3D. At some point, this will become just an absolute prison to encapsulate the enemy or the mind virus or the Whitico or whatever's been basically plaguing and the predator of humanity for a long time. Somehow we let him in the door, and Jesus opened up the window for us to climb out of, but we have to have the faith and do the work to actually climb out of it. And it's really more about faith, and then he'll lead you out, but that faith is not just I believe in Jesus abstractly, and then I'm going to continue to live my life the way I've always lived it. It's like a daily obedience and faith, right? A daily walk, just the way that the music practices, a daily walk, a daily showing up for this faith, right? And when you do that, many people say they've already exited, like they're living side by side with other people who are still very much entrapped with it. So that's why I don't really want to get involved with the black pill, red pill thing, because I think it's not an information issue as I started out. There's plenty being revealed today, but the real thing comes down to, where is your soul? Where are you with anger and bitterness and pride? Have you done the work to try to unravel yourself of your own traumas and to be free in your mind, to choose a higher vibration? Are you free of all that lower vibrational pain and that you have to feel to get free of it? But are you entrapped by it? Are you subconsciously a slave and don't even know it because you're like so numbed out and so disconnected from yourself, which many, many people are. So many years ago when I wrote this song, Let It All Crumble, it wasn't as bad as today at all. But many knew it was coming, and I knew something was coming too. I didn't know what. It's not like I was able to predict what's happened the last 4 years especially, but we all knew something was coming. Many people in this community. So I wrote this song about the idea that no matter what was happening around us, we would have a safe space internally. That shift would have happened, and that we would know love and forgiveness and goodness, and we would have moved beyond the need for our own identity to survive and be the number one, and instead just want to be part of a picture, right? The humility that it takes to sort of be able to lay down your life if it means that many, many, many others will get free from where they've been in bondage. I believed that at the time that I wrote this song. I truly did. And it's been a much harder thing to live the last 4 years especially. I've gotten caught up in a lot of my own fears. Even last night, it was about fear, right? Last night was even about, yesterday was about fear. It was just being about afraid of the new level we're at and whether or not doubts in myself that I would be able to handle it and I would be obedient and I would be able to hold on to this sense of peace no matter what was going on. And the reason this is important and what I reminded myself of yesterday was that for no other reason, for these children that are being human trafficked, if what is happening in the world is revealing that, and that we can finally get, because it cannot happen if good, decent people, which most people are, know about it. Many people, especially since 2016 with the WikiLeaks, many, many good people just think, I don't know what it is. It's cognitive dissonance. If you try to talk to them about this, they just don't recognize it as an issue. Whereas I'm certain that Democrat, Republican, Muslim, Jewish, Christian, Buddhist, Asian, all across the board, I think that decent people would unite in the idea that human trafficking is no good. And especially of children. And if there are children being tortured and hurt and they go missing every day, which there's a lot of evidence to say that that is the case, can't we at least start there, right? And if this world is falling apart and if we're about to go through some pretty bad stuff, but there's even a chance that those children will be set free, that somehow in all of this that there are good guys working, whether it's QAnon is right, I don't advocate that, or whether it's Donald Trump, I don't know. I'm going to just be the first person to say I don't know. But I also don't want to be black-pilled where I don't believe in God's sovereignty, and I don't believe that at some point this has got to end. And if it has to get worse before better, then that gives me the courage to face personally things in my own life that I'm having to face with, right? Life just being very, very difficult on many levels for a lot of us, especially Americans, but maybe everybody, I'm not sure. So Let It All Crumble is a song for courage. It's a song about doing this inner work to cultivate your own character, that you can hold the ground and keep your eyes on the prize, which is a better world. Right? A world where children are not being tortured, a world where we care for our widows and our children, right? And that we are not so lost in our own self-images that we cannot recognizing that we could actually do something to help the suffering of those around us. And that in reality, none of us are free until all of us are free. Because at the very highest levels, when you're connected in Christ, we are one. We are all brothers and sisters. So this game of war and blaming, I mean, some people are still embroiled in it, but many, many people's frequency is rising above it. And that's the real war that we're in right now. If we can rise our frequencies up enough right? If we can get beyond the battlefield enough, will it dismantle that? Is that what's happening? Is that why these things are being exposed? I don't know. I'm bringing all this up because I don't know. I'm very humbled right now. I can't even brag about my musical talents at this moment, even though I've spent a life, trying to get better at it. But what I can say is that I want to be aligned with love. I want to be a force, a real force in this world to help others and to serve others. And so with that, this is one of the best ways I know how. Maybe it doesn't seem like much to me. It's a very humble offering, but I'll trust that it's enough for today. And so I'm going to play this song, Let It All Crumble. Watching it crumble and fall to the ground. The ground shakes and rumbles and I stumble all around. Never thought I would be the one to say, but I'm sure glad it all turned out this way. Nothing around me sparkles, still my heart dances tonight. Nothing around me shines, still my mind sees the light. Nobody's saying that everything will be alright, but our hearts can feel the change, 'cause truth we will no longer fight. Let it all crumble, let it all fall. This sick illusion has no bearing on me at all. Lies, lies, and more lies for the time to see. Waking isn't easy, the deception makes you weak. Look at the darkness, and the darkness turns to light. Forgive your oppressors, and you'll lose a need to fight. Love those who've wronged you, and be free of trying to be right. You must unlock your love and let your soul take flight. Nothing around me sparkles, still my heart dances tonight. Nothing around me shines, still my mind sees the light. Nobody's saying that everything will be alright, but our hearts can feel the change, 'cause truth we will no longer fight. Oh, our hearts can feel the change, 'cause truth we will no longer fight. Oh, no, oh, we will no longer fight. So let it all crumble, let it all fall. Let it all crumble, let it all fall. Yeah, I wrote that song a long time ago, but for me it continues to be like a balm or a salve for my mind to keep it steadfast in these times. Eye on the prize, daily able to seek courage and wisdom and find that sense of well-being no matter what's going on around me. And that's where true self-esteem lies, right? That's real self-esteem, is when it's disconnected from anything in this world. It's intact completely, no matter what. And it's a rock of salvation. And for me, it came through my relationship with my Creator and using music as the metaphor for that relationship and developing it over decades, right? So I offer it today as a prayer for others, that it could be a balm and a salve for you to find that place within yourself. And honestly, it doesn't matter. When it comes to establishing a connection on that level with your Creator, it can take decades, like it did for me with this everyday work, and it can happen for people just in a flash, right? Especially in troubling times. I've always believed that in those instances, if you'll reach out and ask for help when things get really tough, that somehow, sometimes even the pain and the suffering and the torture that you might be experiencing, that somehow can rip through the veil and get you closer to your Creator. Like, He will not leave you alone. You are not alone, especially in those times. So let it all crumble, let it all fall. I hope that you have that space within yourself. And then when I was listening to that song, I was just thinking, who am I? I'm just lucky to be part of it all. I'm lucky to have been able to get up last night and sing any songs, and be part of a wonderful community event where there's so many wonderful people up there singing and playing, so many wonderful souls, that I just want to be part of it. I just want to contribute what little bit I can contribute to the raising of the vibration. And I would encourage you to do the same, that you find whatever it is you can do, wherever it is for you. It's not always going to be big or small, because something I firmly believe is true is that we are so bamboozled here. We are so upside down and operating from, just cockamamie belief systems and an understanding of the world that's being flipped on its head every single day, that sometimes what you think is a small contribution, the tiniest tiny thing, like smiling at somebody, showing kindness, sometimes that can be the biggest stuff. You just don't know. That's the point. You let go of your need to be in control and to deem everything perfect, and instead trust in the perfection of God and the Holy Spirit's influence in your life. And you let it go beyond what you know, and you don't need to control it. You don't need to make it perfect in your own sight. Instead, you're obedient on a level where you're even willing to play the fool if you need to, and it won't crush you, because your identity is as a child of God. And that can never be taken away from you. You can be talked out of it. You can forget about it. You can doubt it. Those are your choices there, but you can never change it. It's there no matter what. And so sometimes, letting go, stop, the more that we can pull back, there's times when we just need to rest and just let go of trying to do anything in our life. And if you're on that perfectionist treadmill, man, never been a better time to get off, because I'm sure you're questioning where that treadmill is leading to at this point. Many people have done everything just right and perfectly, and they never saw the curveballs we've been experiencing the last few years. So what is it all about, Alfie? I don't know. We're going to talk more about it next week. We're going to talk a little bit more about this song, Let It All Crumble. And I guess I'm going to make this caveat. There just might be a time where this is the last episode of this season and I don't even announce it. I don't know. We'll see what happens in October. But otherwise, so far, I'm taking it week by week, and I keep showing up here and I keep putting out the episodes. So one way or another, we'll just get through this, and just sending out some good vibes to you today. A sincere wish that you are responsible for your life, your little corner of the world, and that you are bringing up the vibes in that area in whatever way you can, small or large, it doesn't matter. Raise it. There's a YouTuber that does that. Raise the vibration. Breathe in that good ass prana. And just do whatever you can, man. And if it's sometimes having to get in fetal position and just cry, do that too, because it's going to pass. It won't. This can't last forever. Good has been promised to us. So have faith, my friend. Till next time.